Welcome to the Freud's Angels weekly reading, bringing the collective guidance and understanding for this week's energy.
Remember, never give your power up to a reader or a reading. You always have the power of autonomy. Hey, angels, welcome to your weekly reading. This is for the week of September 15th through the 21st. So, it's been a weird week. There's a lot of kind of good astrology and a lot of kind of crunchy astrology happening. So it's like there's balance in some way, shape, or form here. Um,
Yeah.
but Jupiter and Venus are trining, and man, I tell you what, that's a good thing. Yes, there's other complications with Saturn and Pluto and Neptune and all those other planets, but let's just focus on the good for today because sometimes it's all you can do to survive that.
Yeah.
But so this week, guess what changes? It's Libra season at the end of the week. So love your favorite Libra. Make sure you love Vanessa because it's her season.
Yeah.
It's coming. All the adornments and the beauty and the balance and all the things that Libras are. So embrace your favorite Libra. Wish them happy season. And then next Sunday at 8:43 a.m. to be specific, is our fall equinox. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So what I encourage you to do this week is to really kind of fall is about the harvest, right? We've worked so hard all year to do things, to understand ourselves, to gain awareness, to heal the things, to understand the things. All of the work you've done all year is coming to harvest. And when you're kind of in that space of entering into the fall equinox, it's what are you harvesting? Looking back, it's that first take a look back at what has happened throughout the year. What have you been through? What it is are you were wishing to manifest? What do you understand about your manifestations now? Have they changed? Have they shifted? It's not a Mercury retrograde, but it's a really good time to really celebrate all your wins and see where you want to take, in the next from fall to winter, which is December. Like this is the time to, you know, reap that reward and then begin to understand what you want to plant in the winter for the next season. So, really just take the time, do some journaling. And also, it's the equinox is a really great time to refresh your altars, like change them out. What is the next phase of your altars? Like, take a look at it, dust it off, do you need to change the incense or the flowers or the whatever you use? Like really kind of take a look and create intentional space of grounding with yourself and all the things that you connect to. So, yeah, that's coming this weekend. So, use the week to prepare for that next phase, for the phase of reaping our rewards for all the hard work we've done this year. So, Miss Vanessa, what are our mermaids telling us today?
Well, in addition to all that, it's funny because I feel like when we talk about fall and winter, like I get very not that I get down, but I get very burrowy. Like it feels very like hibernation, is coming, right? Like and like I think that um that's what I tend to do this time of year. I usually do a lot of stuff. Like this is when I make the big changes and I move and like historically, you look through time that's when I do it. And it's like definitely because it's like you better land somewhere because you're about to burrow. You need to burrow because it's wintertime and all that kind of stuff. Um, so with the thought of that energy, it makes sense of why the light card came out from the mermaids because I do feel like sometimes that energy, and when we talk about seasonal affective disorder, which is what people start to talk about when the fall comes, right? Because we lose the light literally, like bit by bit, and it feels like a reminder that the physical sunlight isn't the only light that we have to figure out how to hold on to and cherish and use to our advantage. It's also our inner light and not letting that feel like it has to dim simply because we are entering into, some more grounded energy and some more maybe underground feeling of burrowing and hibernation. That light exists there too. We bring the light though, right? Like in that kind of space. It's not just simply provided for us, we bring it and it becomes more of an intentional act, right? Like I said, when I talk to a lot of people that around this time of year about, the seasons and the change and how it affects them emotionally. And I try to stay away from the word disorder because it doesn't feel like a disorder. It feels very natural to me that
Yeah,
like
me too.
I mean? That like we're gonna feel because it feels like we're supposed to feel like
Yeah,
burrow energy and we're supposed to be able to kind of slow down because the earth is slowing down, but we have not created a society in which that is acceptable. So we're forcing ourselves to go against the natural flow of our bodies. So again, becomes more important to be intentional about seeing our light, feeling how we may have to turn it up ourselves or may have to gain light from another person in order to shine brighter, just kind of like really adjusting ourselves in terms of how we feel internally during these times of the year. You know what I mean? That may be more challenging for some people. I mean, it's the time of year where we're going back to school and
ugh,
yeah, right, like, it makes sense. I was watching something the other day where they were talking about that because it was kind of like the chicken or the egg of, like, well, do we all have this implanted in us about the, like, settle down energy because we've all gone to school and whatever, or was the school schedule created because that's a natural rhythm within humans, and it made more sense to do that, and it was like, well, that makes sense, right? Like, so,
yeah.
yes, it's probably ingrained in us in multiple different ways, but we don't have to see it as like, well, the fun's over, right? Summer's over, and now we've gotta, like, do crappy things, right? Like, we don't have to see it that way. We can choose to see light in these areas as well, even if
Yeah,
we're not physically seeing light.
yeah, yeah. And, I think too is that it's we if we think about the rhythms and the people before the electric times, that's what they did.
Mhm,
They worked so hard to get all of their harvest in. They that this was the time to begin to create that abundance for the winter in order to make it through the winter and in order to like take time out. I mean, when you're a farmer, you go full on from
mhm.
start of spring to the end of fall and you're full on because you're growing, you're planting, you're reaping, all the things are happening. And then all of a sudden you get like 2.5 months off. Like,
Yeah,
and then it starts all over again.
like off.
Yeah. Like nothing. Like
Yes,
feed the animals and keep them alive, but that's about it.
yeah,
Like, um, so, and I think too is that, we think about fall and winter as being the shadow time, the underworld, the idea of because Scorpio season's coming, and
mhm,
and that is, it's also a time to just really reflect and kind of go into those spaces of celebrating where we've been, what we've done, the things we've done, and saying, "Okay, but this is what I've learned, and I wanna shift my next year and shift the next phase of when I begin again." And it's
mhm,
not to say things can't happen and you can't grow things and make things happen in these months, but it's a really great time to go into reflection,
mhm.
and check because, the technical the lunar new year starts in like what March, and not because I never feel January is new year, but because of the calendar thing. But yeah, I just think it's a really great time to kind of understand and go into the places where we want to make changes, but also celebrate the wins that we've had first.
Mhm.
And yes, seasonal depression, like that's the reason I moved from Vancouver. Many of them, and one of them was that because when you get like a month and a half of light and then all the rest of the time it's dark, it's hard. It's
Yeah,
hard. So,
can't
yeah.
imagine.
So hopefully this year will be better. Um, yeah, yeah. And the surrender card today was surrender to low self-esteem. And it's saying you deserve success, love, and abundance. Set an intention to identify and release any remains of low self-esteem. You know, there's a part of me when I read these cards sometimes that I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, let me just do that.
Thanks for bringing it up. I never thought of that.
Yeah. Like, let me just do that. Oh, tomorrow, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk, and in some cases, yes, I do believe it's possible, but sometimes it's not. Like, there's many things. I know that's part of understanding and knowing that you can just walk away from it, but our brains are very strong and powerful. But I think it's also using that light. Like, I love that you said, Vanessa, to find someone to connect with someone else's light, to ask them, for assistance in shining light on yourself and reflecting your own light. Because I think sometimes we forget the light that exists within us. We get all judgmental and like, who are you? And we get all kind of really not kind to ourselves. And sometimes in these moments where we are in these seasons where we tend to get sad or down or hibernative, like having someone to remind you of all the things is a really great tool to have to keep you connected to your light. And why does that matter? Well, low self-esteem is that feeling that, I'm not worthy. I don't have, like, I'm not enough, man. I'm not enough. I don't do enough. I haven't done enough, especially if you're in yearly reflection. Like, well, I don't have any wins this year. Sometimes you need someone to come and say, well, what about this, this, and this, and this, and this? And like, and they're, oh, I didn't see that as a win. Well,
Yeah.
it's because of, your own programming and judgments and however you see it. So sometimes it's nice to have someone to reflect that light back of all the things you have accomplished. And so you can let go of the idea of not being enough or not deserving or not worthy, because if we're able to manifest and create all of these things throughout the year, and even if it's not, you didn't fill the goal or the goal went sideways, but you learned something from it. You gained knowledge to get you to the goal that's really in alignment with you. That's still a win. And I think when we can see that within ourselves and in our lives, we understand that, oh, okay, maybe I'm not the horrible human that I keep telling myself I am.
Yeah, or because I haven't made it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I feel like this is what I end up, doing a lot. Like, I end up being a light reflector in sessions a lot because, especially if something comes back around, we always talk about the only time that you really get to practice your skills is when a situation shows up. And if it's a situation that doesn't show up very often, then we don't get very much practice, right? And so a lot of times people will come in and they're like, I can't believe this and that, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, but this is only the second time you've gotten to practice that, so let's look for our progress. Like, let's not only focus on how far we have to go. We have to also focus on how far we've come, and like see those things as proof that we're going there to where
Yeah.
it is that we think we're going to be at, because we do tend to tie our self-esteem to our goal setting and reaching, and tie our self-esteem to how other people experience us, and tie our self-esteem to our money and our materials and our we tie who we are to so many things. But
Yeah.
we need that reflection back at, like, well, who are you on the inside, and what what do we need to do to turn that light up? Because then everything else gets better. It has to come internally. That external focus is always, the thing that distracts us. So, that reflection of our own light of, hey, here's something that I noticed that you did differently, or here's something that I've noticed that, since you've been A, B, and C, this has been easier for me, like all kinds of things like that, just to get that little bit of a boost. We're never going to get there, right?
Yeah.
Like Wayne Dyer says, we're not going to arrive, we're always arriving. And so we have to just understand that if we're growing people and we've committed to be growing people, we're always going to be growing people, right? Because once we reach another level, we're like, oh, I wonder what's next, right? Like, and that's great to be able to do that, because it means you'll continually level up, but you can't only do that because you'll forget about how far you've come and lose your momentum and lose your inspiration and lose your steam to go forward, because you'll only be talking about what you haven't achieved yet.
Right.
And when you really look back, like my daughter asked me yesterday, she said, Mom, are you doing your dream job? And I was like, honey, I am actually. Like, I am. I dreamed of this job and I am doing it exactly the way that I wanted to. And the little thing came back into my head that said, "But, this isn't just what you wanna do," right? And I kind of was like, "Yes, and." You know what I mean? Like, I recognized that it came through to kind of be like, "Okay, don't rest on your laurels," or "Don't be complacent." Like, "Yeah, okay, I know." Like, I know that. I'm not planning to limit myself. This is not me limiting by saying that I have my dream job. It just means I have my dream job. And if I
Yeah,
dream of another one, I'll go get that too.
yeah,
And that's that internal self-esteem that has nothing to do with what other people have to say or what other people are experiencing of me. That's
yeah,
me and how I feel about myself.
yeah. And that's so important because I think, we talk about a lot about giving our power away. When we can understand that within ourselves, we kind of become more resilient and our foundation is more sturdy and we become feel more powerful when we're able to do that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I pulled a bonus card today because I just felt like pulling another card. Um, and the card that came up was being in the flow. uh, um,
Okay.
oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to read you what the book says, and then we're going to talk about this. Everything is falling into place because you aren't resisting the drift of the great river of life. Let go of the shore and allow the currents to dictate your direction. You don't need to decide and plan everything yourself. Let things flow effortless. And I'll paraphrase the next part because it's really long. It just kind of goes into that space of, you know, we don't always need to control what's happening. And I think we're taught to
Mhm.
make it happen. We're taught to do that. We're taught to we're the ones that are driving it. It's that, ultimately it's because of us that, whatever. And it's just like, really? Really?
Yeah.
So so one of the questions it says, ask yourself, is there anything stopping my ability to adapt to the circumstances of my life? And what is the most important area in my life to let go so that I can get into the flow? Do I feel the need to stay in control? And does this truly serve me? Those are super important questions
Yeah.
because when we fear something or our brain is triggered because it's keeping us safe, like it's doing its job, it's, what do we step into control mode? Do we step into making it happen? Do we step into I can do this. I have to do this. I'm not doing, that ties in with the self esteem. When we feel we have no control because we don't feel good about ourselves, we go into that I need to make it happen energy.
Mhm.
And I always talk about pushing the river. I always know when I'm like trying to control the situation because things don't work out so well.
Yeah.
They don't work out so well. And I feel like I'm trying to push the river and it feels difficult. And it's not to say in flow we won't have white rapids and do some difficult things, but when it's in alignment, it doesn't the difficult thing is there's purpose in it and you know that. I mean, moving out here. Hello. Like for an example, like moving out across the country and doing it in the way that it happened, which wasn't great. It wasn't wonderful. It wasn't, yay, we're on a journey. It was like, oh my God, this is traumatic. And but every step of the way I knew the purpose of this. I
Mhm.
knew that this was in alignment, but it was just bringing up a lot of cellular memory. It was just bringing up a lot of emotions and feelings and all the things that happened. And, you know, I, so it was like I knew I had to do the hard thing, but I also knew the mission of it. I knew the purpose of it and how important it was in my life to do it. So,
Well, yeah, I think it's learning the difference, discerning the difference between disruptive energy because of it's just disruptive. I'm disrupting my patterns and my whatever because they need to be disrupted, right? Like I got to do it or else, it's not going to change. The difference between that disruptive energy and resistance,
yeah,
right? Like in knowing when I'm hitting resistance versus when I'm hitting that disruption,
yeah,
energy is really important. Right, because that's the difference between pushing and, just riding the rapids.
yep, 1000%. Well, friends, I hope that you have a wonderful week ahead. Gather all of your things to prepare your altars, or even if you don't do an altar, just your sacred spaces. Refresh your crystals or your flowers or whatever you have around that makes you feel connected to yourself and spirit. And yeah, and then roll on Libra season and roll on the equinox. And we'll talk to you next week.
Yay, love y'all. Thanks for listening.
We hope we gave you something to support your journey.
Check out our Facebook or Instagram page to connect with us.
Have a great week.